Welcome to the concrete tombs that should have been impregnable. Welcome to the nightmare of soldiers trapped in bunkers meant to withstand hell itself. They believed steel and reinforced concrete would shield them from the storm of fire that rained from the sky. But nothing could prepare them for the obliteration that came in a blur. March 1945, Iwo Jima Pacific Theater. Ash and smoke curling into the hot dawn sky, the distant roar of artillery booming like a monstrous heartbeat. Marines advancing across black volcanic sand, every step shaking the ground beneath them. The smell of gunpowder and charred earth mixing with the salt of the ocean breeze. Japanese defenders huddled in concrete bunkers, their faces drawn tight with exhaustion, fear, and disbelief. They had trained for this. They had fortified. They had stockpiled. Yet the onslaught defied imagination. Shells crashing into walls, turning steel and stone into twisted debris, fragments slicing through air and flesh. Machine guns rattling every burst, a pulse of death, yet still they held, still they hoped against reason, and still the Marines pressed forward. Exploding shells sending plumes of earth into the sky. Every bunker they emerged from was a coffin. Every doorway a trap. Soldiers disappearing into smoke and dust. And yet others caught in crossfire, screaming, lunging, trying to survive. The volcanic sand sticky with blood and sweat, the wind carrying the metallic scent to those who watched from the rear, unable to intervene, powerless. The impossible was happening. Concrete could not hold strategy, could not save. Courage was being tested against forces beyond comprehension. Before we begin, leave a comment where you're watching from and the exact time you're listening. Share the moment, share the tension, share the feeling of being there. The Marines were outnumbered in some pockets, outgunned in others, yet their firepower, coordination, and relentless advance created a shockwave of destruction that made fortified bunkers crumble, made steel and stone surrender. The Japanese defenders could hear the bombs before they saw them. A whistling that became the last sound many would ever hear, followed by the cataclysmic impact that splintered walls, hurled bodies, and left nothing but debris and echoes of desperation. Yet within this chaos, stories of courage flickered. A soldier crawling under fire to drag a wounded comrade, a lieutenant shouting orders while being pinned by machine gun fire. A pair of Marines using the rubble of one fallen bunker as cover to storm another. The battle was a cacophony of fear, courage, confusion, and brutality. Each bunker a microcosm of this struggle. The concrete, once thought invulnerable, now a graveyard of shattered hopes. And every fallen soldier a silent witness to the brutal reality that no preparation could withstand the relentless storm that awaited. March 1945, Iwo Jima Pacific Theater. A clash of human determination against mechanical might, strategy against instinct, courage against overwhelming firepower. Every bunker a testament to both ingenuity and vulnerability. And as you visualize this, imagine being trapped inside one of those bunkers, the walls shaking, dust filling the air, explosions sending fragments like rain. Every sound a harbinger of doom, yet still alive, still thinking, still praying. The volcanic terrain itself seemed to conspire, funneling soldiers into kill zones, turning every trench and bunker into a deadly maze. Yet still the human element persisted. Decisions made in split seconds. Hearts pounding, breath ragged, the weight of comrades and duty pressing down, guiding movements that would determine life or death. And now as we proceed, the stage is set. The players are in place. The battlefield waits to reveal its secrets. The impossible is about to be laid bare. The bunkers that were supposed to stand for decades became graves in mere hours. And you will see how, why, and at what cost. March 1945. Iwo Jima lay under a pall of ash and smoke, the volcanic black sand stretching endlessly beneath the oppressive heat of the Pacific sun. The island was a jagged labyrinth of cliffs and ridges scarred by years of volcanic activity, and now turned into a fortress of death. Every hill, every crater, every natural contour had been transformed into a potential killing ground. Japanese defenders moved silently through reinforced tunnels and bunkers, their boots echoing faintly against cold concrete. Walls bore the scars of previous bombardments, etched reminders that survival here was measured in minutes, not hours. The air was heavy, thick with the acrid scent of gunpowder, sweat, and the salt of the sea. Each sound was magnified, a distant boom, the shriek of a falling shell, the crack of a rifle echoing against cliffs and caves like the heartbeat of the island itself. Marines assembled on the beaches, gear-loaded eyes scanning every ridge, every crevice. Timing angle of fire line of sight, every calculation could mean life or death. Landing crafts struck the shore soldiers, spilling onto the black sand rifles, ready grenades clenched, hearts hammering. The first volleys of Japanese machine guns cut through the air like jagged lightning. Screams intertwined with the roar of artillery. Some Marines fell instantly, others scrambled for cover, returning fire wherever possible. Defenders inside bunkers concealed by thick concrete and camouflaged with volcanic ash waited with deadly patience. They knew the terrain intimately, every ridge, every hidden defilade. Yet even their knowledge could not prepare them for the scale, precision, and coordination of the assault. Artillery shells screamed through the sky, detonating with concussive force that hurled sand, rock, and bodies into the air. The ground shook beneath each impact, dust and smoke choking visibility. Marines advanced in carefully measured bounds, zigzagging across open sand where snipers had clear lines of sight. Each second was a gamble, each movement a test of nerves. Inside the bunkers, defenders faced the impossible. Walls they had trusted, reinforced over years, shuddered and cracked under relentless bombardment. Splintered concrete and steel fragments rained down, cutting through bodies, tearing flesh, shattering hope. Yet still, they fired back rifles and machine guns, rattling, trying to stall the inevitable, to protect comrades to survive. Ammunition dwindled, positions became exposed, yet they held hope, flickering like a candle in suffocating darkness. On the ridges above, officers coordinated with maps and compasses, radios crackling urgent orders. Small units moved with precision, exploiting every weak point in the defenses, advancing from cover to cover. The island itself seemed alive, each crater and hill shaping the battle, dictating movement, amplifying chaos. Every bunker became a stage for courage and terror. The weather added another layer of unpredictability. Gusts of wind carried smoke and ash across the battlefield, masking movements, reducing visibility to seconds. Heat and humidity sapped strength every step across volcanic sand, becoming a battle against exhaustion. Tunnels once safe havens now echoed with shellfire, collapsing in places, cutting off escape routes, turning bunkers into death traps. A platoon of Marines approached a semicircle of heavily fortified pillboxes. Artillery coordinates had been set precisely. The first salvo hit, with devastating effect, concrete crumbling steel twisted into jagged shards. Smoke and dust obscured the battlefield. Survivors scrambled to return fire, their lines of sight compromised. Another wave of Marines pressed forward, grenades thrown into openings, flamethrowers clearing bunkers one by one. Resistance faltered with each assault, losses mounting, ability to mount coordinated defense collapsing. In the tunnels, soldiers moved in near darkness, using hand signals and whispers, hearts pounding. Every corner could conceal death, every hallway a trap. Stench of smoke, gunpowder, and unwashed bodies pervaded the air. Fatigue and fear gnawed at resolve, yet still they pressed on, knowing hesitation meant annihilation. Outside ridges funneled defenders into kill zones. Craters became hazards and cover simultaneously. The volcanic rock was unforgiving, injuries multiplied, soldiers falling into jagged surfaces. Communications faltered as radios jammed and runners fell under fire. Coordination broke under sheer intensity. Decisions had to be instinctive, every second counting. By midday, combined artillery, naval bombardment, and infantry assault had transformed once fearsome fortifications into shattered ruins. Dust, smoke, and fire blurred the landscape. Bunkers thought invincible lay in rubble. Defenders forced into secondary positions, tunnels or trenches, many never to emerge. Amid the carnage, extraordinary bravery emerged. Soldiers dragged wounded comrades under fire. Marines coordinated to flank stubborn pillboxes, timing movements to the second. Japanese defenders launched desperate counterattacks, sacrificing themselves to delay advances. The island groaned under destruction, each explosion resonating through rock and ash, shaking confidence, bodies, and minds. The rhythm of battle was relentless: advance, bombard, retreat, regroup, press forward. As the sun climbed, devastation became apparent. Terrain once thought secure littered with craters, wrecked equipment, and fallen soldiers. Concrete tombs became coffins, volcanic sand soaked with blood and fire. Every sound, whistling shells, cracking rifles, screams, reinforced that this battle was absolute, unforgiving, final. Yet human ingenuity persisted. Marines adapted coordinating movements, exploiting every weak point. Japanese defenders improvised using rubble tunnels, blind spots to create pockets of resistance. Every action a gamble, every decision a test of courage and skill. The island bore witness to the clash of strategy and instinct, preparation and improvisation, fear and valor. The landscape was both enemy and ally, shaping battle, dictating movement, amplifying chaos. Night approached, fires burned across ridges, smoke curling into the darkening sky. Sounds of battle diminished slightly, replaced by groans of the wounded and occasional gunfire. Survivors huddled where they could, exhausted, terrified, uncertain of dawn. The island had been reshaped, every hill bunker crater marked by brutal arithmetic of war. The bunkers that had promised safety had failed, the landscape exacted its toll, and human courage had been pushed to its absolute limit. This was a battle of endurance, wit, and sheer will. Every moment action, fallen defender, or victorious attacker contributed to a story that would echo long after the smoke cleared. The Japanese bunkers, meticulously engineered, had been considered some of the most formidable defensive positions in the Pacific. Reinforced concrete up to 2 meters thick, interlocking pillboxes, tunnels carved deep into volcanic rock. Each bunker had multiple firing slits, overlapping fields of fire, and cleverly concealed exits. Maps, blueprints, and decades of military doctrine informed every detail. The defenders trusted these fortifications to withstand naval bombardments and artillery shelling, to hold back any assault for days or even weeks. Yet, when the Marines began their assault, the reality shattered expectations. Thousands of rounds rained down within the first hours, each shell calculated for maximum impact. Field artillery, howitzers, and even 16-inch battleship shells combined to create concussive waves that shattered walls and threw debris like deadly hail. Each volley was timed, aimed with precision, informed by reconnaissance planes, aerial photography, and meticulous map analysis. Secondary positions were targeted before defenders could consolidate, leaving little opportunity to regroup. Inside the bunkers, defenders scrambled to maintain firing positions. Ammunition stores were destroyed or inaccessible as walls collapsed, passages blocked with rubble. Communication lines severed by bombardment left isolated groups cut off from command. Split-second decisions determined life or death, return fire, blindly attempt a counterattack, or retreat into tunnels that could themselves become tombs. The calculated superiority of the Marines meant that every defensive move was anticipated and countered. Flamethrowers neutralized firing slits and pillboxes, grenades cleared interior rooms, and coordinated infantry movements ensured overlapping fields of attack. Statistics reveal the scale of destruction. Within a single day, dozens of bunkers were neutralized, hundreds of defenders killed or wounded, and Marines advanced into positions previously thought untouchable. Tactical diagrams from the Office of Naval Intelligence confirm that even bunkers reinforced to withstand months of siege could not survive concentrated integrated assaults. Mortar and artillery teams coordinated to hit secondary positions as infantry engaged primary targets, creating a relentless cycle of suppression and advancement. Personal accounts underscore the intensity of combat. Diaries describe soldiers trapped in bunkers firing until walls collapsed around them, rifles jamming grenades, detonating inches away. One gunner continued to fire from a partially destroyed pillbox, collapsing only when the ceiling caved in. Stories passed among survivors speak of impossible feats, a soldier dragging a comrade through a hail of bullets. Marines storming a bunker under a torrent of shrapnel, the landscape itself seeming to conspire, channeling movement into kill zones. The folklore of the island amplifies the fact legends of ghostly figures in tunnels, whispers guiding Marines past unseen dangers haunt the accounts of those who survived. The technological advantage of the Marines was decisive. Flamethrowers projected fire into bunkers, collapsing wooden supports and forcing defenders from cover. Engineers placed explosives to breach walls, neutralizing positions designed to withstand days of siege. Every innovation, every tactic exploited weaknesses in the Japanese defensive plan. Analysis shows that overlapping fire zones were compromised, ventilation shafts became vulnerabilities, and tunnels intended as escape routes often funneled defenders into open kill zones. Even when defenders attempted counterattacks, they faced overwhelming firepower. Concentrated artillery prevented regrouping. Sniper teams eliminated exposed soldiers, and machine gun fire suppressed movement. Casualty ratios quickly escalated. Whereas Japanese engineers had calculated survivability based on static attacks, the dynamic combined arms assault rendered these calculations obsolete. Every defensive estimate was invalidated by the speed, precision, and coordination of the Marines. The volcanic terrain further amplified lethality. Craters and ridges, once considered obstacles for attackers, were used strategically by Marines to channel defenders into exposed positions. Smoke and ash obscured vision, turning every movement into a gamble. Injuries multiplied as soldiers stumbled into jagged rock, and exhaustion set in under the relentless heat and humidity. Communications were intermittent at best, leaving isolated units to improvise under catastrophic pressure. Engineers' reports after the battle confirmed structural failures. Reinforced concrete walls designed to absorb hundreds of shells fractured under combined artillery and infantry assault. Pillboxes intended to dominate entire sectors became traps as flamethrowers, grenades, and precise infantry maneuvers eliminated their effectiveness. Tactical maps illustrate overlapping kill zones where no defender could survive unscathed. The combination of planning firepower and terrain exploitation created a battlefield where static defense was obsolete. Survivor testimonies blend fact and legend. Soldiers recount moments where walls collapsed unexpectedly, tunnels filled with smoke, and comrades vanished into debris. Yet amidst this, acts of valor persisted, throwing oneself onto a grenade to save a teammate, dragging the wounded to temporary cover, holding fire positions against impossible odds. Folklore emerges in the form of whispered stories, ghosts of fallen defenders guiding or haunting the living, inexplicable survival of some amidst total destruction. Numbers, however, anchor the narrative. Each bunker's neutralization, each casualty count, each advance of the Marines was meticulously recorded. Tactical analysis shows that bunkers designed to withstand days fell within hours, often in less than the predicted time to collapse. Flamethrowers alone were sufficient to neutralize multiple positions, explosives destroyed structural supports, and artillery suppressed any potential counterattack. Human ingenuity and technological superiority converged to overwhelm what had once been considered unassailable. By the end of the first day, the island's landscape was irreversibly altered. Smoke, fire, and debris blanketed ridges and valleys. Bunkers that had promised protection were now shattered tombs. Survivors recounted both horror and awe. Horror at the devastation, awe at the coordination, courage and determination displayed by Marines and defenders alike. Every fact, every number, every personal account converged to explain why these fortifications, despite their engineering, became graves. The lessons of fact layer are clear. Static defenses, no matter how formidable, are vulnerable to integrated, coordinated, and technologically superior assaults. Human will combined with innovation and precision can overcome even the strongest fortifications. And as the sun set over Iwo Jima, the statistics were undeniable. The bunkers had failed, defenders had suffered catastrophic losses, and the island itself bore the marks of strategic and technological mastery. The Japanese bunkers, meticulously engineered, had been considered some of the most formidable defensive positions in the Pacific. Reinforced concrete, up to 2 meters thick, interlocking pillboxes, tunnels carved deep into volcanic rock. Each bunker had multiple firing slits, overlapping fields of fire, and cleverly concealed exits. Maps, blueprints, and decades of military doctrine informed every detail. The defenders trusted these fortifications to withstand naval bombardments and artillery shelling, to hold back any assault for days or even weeks. Yet when the Marines began their assault, the reality shattered expectations. Thousands of rounds rained down within the first hours, each shell calculated for maximum impact. Millimeter field artillery, and even 16-inch battleship shells combined to create concussive waves that shattered walls and threw debris like deadly hail. Each volley was timed, aimed with precision, informed by reconnaissance planes, aerial photography, and meticulous map analysis. Secondary positions were targeted before defenders could consolidate, leaving little opportunity to regroup. Inside the bunkers, defenders scrambled to maintain firing positions. Ammunition stores were destroyed or inaccessible as walls collapsed, passages blocked with rubble. Communication lines severed by bombardment left isolated groups cut off from command. Split-second decisions determined life or death, return fire, blindly attempt a counterattack, or retreat into tunnels that could themselves become tombs. The calculated superiority of the Marines meant that every defensive move was anticipated and countered. Flamethrowers neutralized firing slits and pillboxes, grenades cleared interior rooms, and coordinated infantry movements ensured overlapping fields of attack. Statistics reveal the scale of destruction. Within a single day, dozens of bunkers were neutralized, hundreds of defenders killed or wounded, and Marines advanced into positions previously thought untouchable. Tactical diagrams from the Office of Naval Intelligence confirm that even bunkers reinforced to withstand months of siege could not survive concentrated, integrated assaults. Mortar and artillery teams coordinated to hit secondary positions as infantry engaged primary targets, creating a relentless cycle of suppression and advancement. Personal accounts underscore the intensity of combat. Diaries describe soldiers trapped in bunkers, firing until walls collapsed around them, rifles jamming grenades, detonating inches away. One gunner continued to fire from a partially destroyed pillbox, collapsing only when the ceiling caved in. Stories passed among survivors speak of impossible feats, a soldier dragging a comrade through a hail of bullets, Marines storming a bunker under a torrent of shrapnel, the landscape itself seeming to conspire, channeling movement into kill zones. The folklore of the island amplifies the fact. Legends of ghostly figures in tunnels, whispers guiding Marines past unseen dangers, haunt the accounts of those who survived. The technological advantage of the Marines was decisive. Flamethrowers projected fire into bunkers, collapsing wooden supports and forcing defenders from cover. Engineers placed explosives to breach walls, neutralizing positions designed to withstand days of siege. Every innovation, every tactic exploited weaknesses in the Japanese defensive plan. Analysis shows that overlapping fire zones were compromised, ventilation shafts became vulnerabilities, and tunnels intended as escape routes often funneled defenders into open kill zones. Even when defenders attempted counterattacks, they faced overwhelming firepower. Concentrated artillery prevented regrouping. Sniper teams eliminated exposed soldiers, and machine gun fire suppressed movement. Casualty ratios quickly escalated. Whereas Japanese engineers had calculated survivability based on static attacks, the dynamic combined arms assault rendered these calculations obsolete. Every defensive estimate was invalidated by the speed, precision, and coordination of the Marines. The volcanic terrain further amplified lethality. Craters and ridges, once considered obstacles for attackers, were used strategically by Marines to channel defenders into exposed positions. Smoke and ash obscured vision, turning every movement into a gamble. Injuries multiplied as soldiers stumbled into jagged rock, and exhaustion set in under the relentless heat and humidity. Communications were intermittent at best, leaving isolated units to improvise under catastrophic pressure. Engineers' reports after the battle confirmed structural failures. Reinforced concrete walls designed to absorb hundreds of shells fractured under combined artillery and infantry assault. Pillboxes intended to dominate entire sectors became traps, as flamethrowers, grenades, and precise infantry maneuvers eliminated their effectiveness. Tactical maps illustrate overlapping kill zones where no defender could survive unscathed. The combination of planning firepower and terrain exploitation created a battlefield where static defense was obsolete. Survivor testimonies blend fact and legend. Soldiers recount moments where walls collapsed unexpectedly, tunnels filled with smoke, and comrades vanished into debris. Yet amidst this, acts of valor persisted, throwing oneself onto a grenade to save a teammate, dragging the wounded to temporary cover, holding fire positions against impossible odds. Folklore emerges in the form of whispered stories, ghosts of fallen defenders guiding or haunting the living, inexplicable survival of some amidst total destruction. Numbers, however, anchor the narrative. Each bunker's neutralization, each casualty count, each advance of the Marines was meticulously recorded. Tactical analysis shows that bunkers designed to withstand days fell within hours, often in less than the predicted time to collapse. Flamethrowers alone were sufficient to neutralize multiple positions, explosives destroyed structural supports, and artillery suppressed any potential counterattack. Human ingenuity and technological superiority converged to overwhelm what had once been considered unassailable. By the end of the first day, the island's landscape was irreversibly altered. Smoke, fire, and debris blanketed ridges and valleys. Bunkers that had promised protection were now shattered tombs. Survivors recounted both horror and awe. Horror at the devastation, awe at the coordination, courage and determination displayed by Marines and defenders alike. Every fact, every number, every personal account converged to explain why these fortifications, despite their engineering, became graves. The lessons of Fact Layer Y are clear. Static defenses, no matter how formidable, are vulnerable to integrated, coordinated, and technologically superior assaults. Human will combined with innovation and precision can overcome even the strongest fortifications. And as the sun set over Iwo Jima, the statistics were undeniable. The bunkers had failed, defenders had suffered catastrophic losses, and the island itself bore the marks of strategic and technological mastery. March 1945. Iwo Jima. The smoke hung thick over the ridges, drifting in slow, heavy waves across the volcanic black sand. Inside one shattered bunker, Private Nakamura crouched against the crumbling wall, his rifle clutched in trembling hands. He could hear the distant roar of artillery, the screeching whistle of incoming shells, and the staccato of machine gun fire cutting through the chaos like jagged knives. Each sound pressed against his eardrums, a relentless reminder that every second could be his last. He glanced at the narrow slit that served as their only observation point, eyes straining through the haze. Across the sand, Marines moved with calculated precision. Bodies, low grenades, ready flamethrowers aimed at each concrete stronghold. Nakamura's comrades whispered orders, their voices tight with fear, yet steady with discipline. They had trained for this, yet training could not prepare them for the sensory assault, heat smoke, the smell of gunpowder and blood mingling into a suffocating haze. Private Sato crawled along the shattered floor of another bunker, debris cutting into his uniform and skin. The walls around him vibrated with the impact of each shell, concrete dust filling his mouth and nostrils. He fired a burst from his machine gun, but the Marines had already anticipated their position. He could see the flash from their rifles through the smoke. A fellow soldier shouted a warning, diving to shield him from an incoming grenade. The explosion tore through the wall behind them, sending splinters of steel and rock flying, the sound deafening the force, knocking Sato to the ground. For a moment, time seemed suspended, the world reduced to the flash of fire, the cry of a comrade, the acrid taste of smoke. Then instinct took over. They scrambled to find a secondary position, fingers bleeding from debris, uniforms scorched by flamethrowers, hearts pounding, lungs burning. Outside, Sergeant Tanaka led a small team through the tunnels connecting several bunkers. Each step was a calculated risk. A misstep could trigger an unseen trap, a collapsing ceiling, or an ambush from Marines already inside the position. He motioned his men forward with hand signals, each gesture precise, deliberate, rehearsed. They moved silently, breath held, aware that any noise could be fatal. A sudden tremor from above the impact of artillery shook the tunnel, dust raining down. Soldiers froze, then continued, every movement measured, every heartbeat a drum of tension. They emerged into a narrow slit of sunlight, glimpsing the advancing enemy. Tanaka signaled a burst of machine gun fire, aiming to delay to buy seconds to protect those deeper in the complex. Meanwhile, outside the tunnels, Marines advanced over volcanic ridges. Corporal Jenkins crouched low, eyes scanning the rubble-strewn terrain. His squad moved in unison, each man aware of the lethal geometry of the battlefield. The pillboxes they were approaching had been firing relentlessly, yet the Marines knew the vulnerabilities, pre-mapped angles, blind spots, and ventilation shafts that allowed flamethrowers to reach inside. Jenkins lobbed a grenade into a slit, hearing the muffled cry of a defender before it was silenced. The squad pressed forward, covering each other, using fallen debris as cover. Smoke and dust created a surreal haze, twisting shadows, blurring friend and foe. Every step carried the risk of death. Every action, a test of nerve, yet coordination and training, turned chaos into controlled advance. Inside another bunker, Lieutenant Hoshino surveyed his men, their numbers dwindling, ammunition low. He barked orders, voice strained but authoritative. "Hold your position. Do not retreat. Cover the tunnel exit." A Marine round tore through the wall nearby, sending chunks of concrete raining down. A young soldier screamed, clutching his shoulder. Hoshino grabbed his arm, dragging him into a safer corner. Fear and duty collided in that moment, every breath weighted with imminent threat. He glanced at the map in his hand, realizing the position was compromised. Yet he remained, guiding his men, a flicker of resolve amidst the engulfing terror. In another sector, two Marines used the debris of a destroyed bunker to flank a remaining pillbox. They moved low coordination, silent but precise. One lobbed a grenade, the explosion sending a shockwave that shook the earth beneath their feet. Japanese defenders fired back, but now isolated, outgunned, and disoriented. The sound of the Marines' advance echoed through tunnels, each crack of rifle fire a herald of inevitability. Fear etched every movement, yet determination burned in every pair of eyes. Survivors ducked, rolled, and fired back, aware that their fate hung in balance with every heartbeat. The battlefield became a theater of contrasts. Inside the bunkers, desperation, courage, and discipline collided. Outside, the relentless precision of the Marines created chaos and inevitability. Dust and smoke hung like curtains, obscuring the violence yet amplifying tension. Screams, explosions, the hiss of flamethrowers, the tearing of concrete, all combined into a cacophony that defined the human experience of this confrontation. Soldiers on both sides felt the relentless compression of time, each second an eternity, each action irreversible. Amidst the chaos, small acts of heroism emerged. A soldier dragged a wounded comrade across open sand, ignoring incoming fire. Another blocked a tunnel to protect his fellow defenders, sacrificing himself to buy time. Marines coordinated silently, anticipating moves, reacting to threats instantly. Every act influenced the next, creating a chain reaction of survival, loss, and bravery. These human stories, raw and immediate, brought life to the statistics, giving faces and names to the casualty reports and tactical diagrams. As night fell, the battlefield remained strewn with rubble, the silhouettes of destroyed bunkers dark against the glowing embers of fires. Survivors, both Marines and Japanese defenders, huddled where they could, exhausted, bleeding, and haunted by the day's events. Every bunker, every tunnel, every ridge told a story of courage, fear, and the merciless arithmetic of war. The human element, decisions, instincts, loyalty, and sacrifice had interacted with technology and tactics to produce outcomes that would define the island's history. The human scene of Iwo Jima revealed the complexity of warfare, where numbers and technology met flesh, blood, and mind, where courage and fear were inseparable, where every second demanded instinct, calculation, and willpower. And as dawn approached, the survivors braced for what the next day would bring, knowing that each moment on this volcanic island could be their last, and every decision would echo through history. The volcanic terrain of Iwo Jima had already claimed its toll on the defenders, yet the second wave of Marines pressed forward, their movements synchronized with deadly precision. Every ridge, every crater, every destroyed bunker became a stage for escalation, a theater where human endurance collided with firepower and strategy. The defenders, exhausted and outnumbered, attempted to regroup to mount a counterattack. But every move was anticipated. From aerial reconnaissance to artillery spotters, every angle had been mapped, every weakness exposed. They had X, but the Marines now had Y superior firepower, coordinated assault, and relentless determination. Outproduced, outflanked, outmaneuvered, the numbers alone were staggering. Inside the remaining bunkers, defenders clung to their positions, firing at shadows, listening to the screams and explosions outside. Ammunition dwindled with each burst. Walls shook under continuous bombardment. Reinforcements were impossible, communication lines severed. Every action had to be immediate, precise, and calculated. A misstep could mean death, yet every soldier acted with a desperate combination of discipline and instinct. Reports from the battlefield show that bunkers once capable of withstanding days of assault were neutralized within hours. Artillery mortars and flamethrowers exploited structural weaknesses, ventilation shafts, and firing slits. Each destroyed bunker was a domino in the collapse of the entire defensive network. Outside, the Marines adapted continuously. Small teams moved from cover to cover, suppressing targets, lobbing grenades into firing slits, neutralizing machine guns. Engineers cleared obstacles and prepared demolition charges, exploiting every flaw in the fortifications. The combination of preparation, training, and adaptability overwhelmed the defenders' static strategies. Observers noted that bunkers with overlapping fields of fire lost effectiveness rapidly once combined. Arms tactics were applied. The defenders' calculations had assumed static engagements. The reality of the dynamic integrated assault rendered these assumptions obsolete. The human element intensified the chaos. Survivors described moments of unimaginable pressure, a gunner trapped in a collapsed pillbox, continuing to fire until the walls gave way, dragging himself from the rubble to continue resistance. Another account described a soldier throwing himself onto a grenade to save his comrades, a split-second choice that altered the fate of those nearby. These acts of valor interwove with the cold arithmetic of warfare, creating a narrative where heroism and tragedy coexisted. The folklore layer deepened tales of ghostly figures guiding the Marines through smoke-filled tunnels, whispers of unseen hands, survival against impossible odds. The stories became a part of the island's mythos, blending with factual records to convey the surreal intensity of the conflict. Data from after-action reports detail the effectiveness of combined assaults. Bunkers previously considered impervious were systematically neutralized. Mortar fire, artillery, and naval bombardments were timed to prevent defenders from regrouping. Every position had been analyzed and firepower concentrated to ensure maximum disruption. Casualty figures climbed, with hundreds of defenders killed or wounded in coordinated waves of assault. Tactical diagrams illustrate the overlapping kill zones, demonstrating why even reinforced positions failed. Each statistic reinforced the narrative strategy technology, and numbers decisively overpowered the defensive network. Inside the tunnels, Japanese soldiers attempted to improvise using debris and collapsed walls as cover, firing blindly at advancing Marines. Yet every move was anticipated. Spotters relayed positions to artillery teams, flamethrower operators exploited ventilation shafts, and engineers cleared obstacles with deadly efficiency. The defenders were outproduced, outmaneuvered, and ultimately outclassed. The human cost was immense. Survivors recounted hearing comrades fall, feeling walls collapse, and navigating smoke-filled corridors. Decisions were instant, often instinctive, balancing self-preservation against the duty to protect others. The Marines' coordination magnified their effectiveness. Teams operated in sync, grenades, rifles, flamethrowers, and explosives working in concert. Each bunker that fell created opportunities to advance into previously defended zones. Analysis shows that by the third wave of assaults, nearly every remaining defensive position had been compromised. Attempts to regroup were met with overlapping fire-suppressive artillery and advancing infantry. The defenders' training and ingenuity could not compensate for the overwhelming integration of tactics and firepower. At the heart of the battlefield, Lieutenant Saito coordinated a desperate defense. He shouted orders through collapsing tunnels, guiding small groups to secondary positions. Explosions shook the floor, dust and debris choking visibility. His men fired relentlessly, yet one by one positions were overrun. Accounts describe him using every available means, hand grenades, rifles, improvised explosives to delay the inevitable. Each decision bought precious seconds, but the cumulative weight of the assault was impossible to resist. Meanwhile, Marines exploited every structural vulnerability. Pillboxes were cleared with flamethrowers and demolition charges. Mortars pounded secondary positions, preventing consolidation. Engineers moved under fire to create pathways and neutralize obstacles. Data indicates that bunkers once expected to hold for days were rendered inoperative in a matter of hours. Statistical analysis confirms the decisive impact of combined arms operations: outproduced, outmaneuvered, and outflanked. By nightfall, the battlefield bore the marks of systematic destruction. Concrete walls lay shattered, tunnels collapsed, and the volcanic sand was blackened with smoke and blood. Survivors huddled in whatever shelter they could find, exhausted and disoriented. Every bunker ridge and crater told a story of intense firepower, strategic planning, and human courage. The human scene intertwined with fact-layer heroism, desperation, tactical mastery, and technological superiority converged to create the conditions that made fortified positions untenable. The escalation was complete. The defenders' ability to resist had been decisively broken. Each destroyed bunker, each suppressed firing position, each casualty contributed to the overall collapse of the defensive network. Reports confirm that these outcomes were not isolated. They were the product of coordinated planning, superior firepower, and adaptability in the face of entrenched defenses. The bunkers that had promised protection had failed, becoming tombs under relentless assault. The human and tactical lessons of these engagements were now etched into the volcanic landscape, a testament to the intersection of courage, technology, and strategy. The aftermath of the relentless assaults on Iwo Jima revealed the full scale of devastation. Concrete bunkers that had been thought impregnable were reduced to rubble, twisted steel jutting from the volcanic sand like skeletal remains. The defenders, though disciplined and resolute, had been decisively outmatched, outgunned, outmaneuvered, and outflanked. Survivors huddled in tunnels and behind shattered Watu's faces smeared with ash and blood, eyes wide with shock, hearing only the distant rumble of artillery and the intermittent crack of rifle fire. Each man grappled with the realization that their positions, their carefully prepared defenses, had failed. Commanders on both sides assessed the consequences. Lieutenant Saito, forced to abandon the last functional bunker, looked over his shattered unit. Exhaustion and despair etched deep lines across their faces. There was no room for error, no margin for miscalculation. Every strategic choice made in the previous days had been tested against the superior coordination and firepower of the Marines. The island itself bore witness to the calculus of War Hill's ridges and craters marked by shell impact, every bunker destroyed, every trench compromised. Observers noted that the collapse of these fortifications was both structural and psychological, shattering morale, even among the most disciplined soldiers. From the perspective of the attacking forces, the operation demonstrated the effectiveness of integrated tactics. Combined artillery, naval bombardment, and infantry assaults had neutralized positions once considered invulnerable. Marines advanced with methodical precision, exploiting every vulnerability, coordinating every move, and maintaining relentless pressure. Reports show casualty ratios heavily favored the attackers, yet these numbers alone do not convey the human cost, the screams, the fear, the courage displayed under impossible conditions. Amidst the ruins, acts of heroism persisted. A soldier dragged a wounded comrade from the open sand, ignoring incoming fire. Another stood alone to suppress a machine gun nest, buying seconds for others to reposition. These moments, fleeting yet profound, highlighted the intersection of instinct training and sheer will. Diaries from survivors captured these experiences in harrowing detail, the sensation of walls vibrating from nearby blasts, dust choking every breath, the metallic taste of blood, the surreal clarity of life hanging by a thread. The terrain continued to play a decisive role. Volcanic ridges funneled defenders into kill zones, craters obscured movement, and smoke from fires and explosions masked approach routes. Marines adapted continuously, using these environmental factors to maximize efficiency while minimizing risk. Engineers cleared paths, set charges, and coordinated with infantry and artillery to maintain momentum. Japanese defenders, isolated and exhausted, were left with few viable options. Each failed counterattack further eroded their ability to resist. By the end of the day, the battlefield was irrevocably altered. Bunkers lay in ruins, tunnels caved in ridges pockmarked by shell impact. The volcanic sand was stained with ash, soot, and blood. A stark testament to the ferocity of the engagement, survivors from both sides were left to confront the psychological toll. Shock, grief, and a surreal sense of disbelief pervaded the air. Every fallen comrade, every destroyed position, every echo of gunfire reinforced the harsh reality that war was absolute in its consequences. Historians analyzing the engagement note the decisive lessons. Static fortifications, no matter how well engineered, cannot withstand an integrated, adaptive, and technologically superior assault. Tactical planning, coordination across multiple units, and continuous adaptation ensured that the defenders' efforts, no matter how courageous, were ultimately insufficient. The island's topography, once considered advantageous for the defenders, amplified their vulnerability when exploited by coordinated attack. Accounts from after-action reports detail the destruction in precise terms. Reinforced bunkers designed to withstand days of shelling fell in hours. Casualty numbers, positions neutralized, and timelines were meticulously recorded, providing a factual backbone to the human stories. The quantitative data corroborates the qualitative accounts of terror, courage, and desperation. Flamethrowers, demolition teams, and artillery combined to create a battlefield where every defensive assumption was invalidated. Yet even in the devastation, the human element remained vivid. Survivors recount the decisions made in the split seconds between life and death, firing on targets, dragging wounded comrades, improvising defenses, or surrendering when hope had run out. These narratives, intertwined with precise military records, illustrate the interplay between human resilience and tactical calculation. Folklore persisted alongside fact-whispered tales of spectral figures, impossible survival, and moments of uncanny guidance offered by unseen forces. The mythology of Iwo Jima amplified the intensity of experience without diminishing the underlying reality. The high command of the defenders, witnessing the collapse of their positions, realized the futility of continued resistance in many sectors. Decisions to retreat, consolidate, or surrender were made under extreme duress with limited information and in the shadow of overwhelming force. Strategic lessons emerged immediately. Fortifications alone could not secure victory, and superior coordination, planning, and adaptability dictated outcomes. The Marines' ability to exploit weaknesses, maintain initiative, and integrate technology and tactics proved decisive. By nightfall, Iwo Jima was a transformed battlefield. The remnants of bunkers, shattered concrete, and scorched earth bore witness to the combined impact of human courage, technological power, and strategic mastery. Survivors from both sides reflected on the immediacy of mortality, the weight of command, and the fleeting nature of hope amidst unrelenting violence. The island stood as both a graveyard and a testament to the brutal arithmetic of warfare. The payoff and aftermath of these assaults underscored a fundamental truth: preparation. Bravery and skill could delay the inevitable, but against overwhelming integrated assault, even the most formidable defenses could fail. Concrete walls, steel reinforcements, and tactical ingenuity could not withstand the relentless adaptive force of combined arms operations. And as dawn approached the following day, the survivors would emerge, carry forward the lessons learned, and bear witness to the price of strategy, courage, and the unforgiving calculus of war. The volcanic sands of Iwo Jima lay quiet, the smoke of battle lingering like a shroud over the shattered landscape. The remnants of bunkers, twisted steel, and rubble-strewn ridges testified to the ferocity of the conflict, each scar a story of human courage, desperation, and the inexorable logic of warfare. Survivors moved cautiously among the ruins, their footsteps stirring ash and debris, eyes scanning for threats that had largely ceased, yet minds still attuned to danger. The island itself seemed to breathe, carrying echoes of gunfire screams and the subtle whisper of winds through fractured concrete. History would remember this as a battlefield where preparation, technology, and human will collided. The bunkers that had promised safety had failed, yet their presence had shaped every action, every decision, every split-second calculation. Soldiers on both sides carried the weight of these decisions, their experiences seared into memory, their actions contributing to the unfolding legend of the island. Even amidst victory or survival, the human cost was stark: lives lost, bodies buried in sand and rubble, courage tested beyond imagination. Observers would note the lessons of strategy and coordination. Integrated tactics, combined arms assaults, and technological advantage proved decisive. Yet human resilience persisted, shaping the narrative through acts of heroism, improvisation, and sacrifice. Diaries and letters from both sides recount moments where instinct overcame fear, where a single decision altered the fate of a squad, and where courage persisted in the face of overwhelming odds. The factual record of shell counts, bunker collapses, and casualty statistics merged with folklore, whispered stories of survival, ghostly presences, and improbable rescues, creating a tapestry of reality and legend that defined Iwo Jima. The aftermath also revealed the psychological toll. Commanders reflected on the limitations of fortifications, the vulnerability of even the best prepared positions, and the consequences of underestimating coordinated assault. Survivors grappled with shock, grief, and relief, their minds replaying moments of terror and heroism alike. Every decision, every sacrifice, every movement contributed to the collective memory, a repository of human experience under extreme conditions. The island became both a graveyard and a classroom, imparting lessons on courage, strategy, and the unforgiving nature of war. Even as the smoke cleared and the immediate threat subsided, the environment remained a stark reminder of the day's events. Burned earth, shattered concrete, and twisted steel bore silent witness to the intensity of the engagements. Marine forces consolidated positions, treated the wounded, and documented the battlefield, ensuring that both the operational and human narratives were preserved. The survivors of the defenders assessed losses, tended to the injured, and contemplated the futility of static defense against overwhelming and adaptive force. The philosophical reflection on these events was inevitable. What if the defenses had been stronger, more flexible, or better coordinated? Could human ingenuity alone have compensated for technological and numerical inferiority? These questions lingered unanswered, but pressing shaping the lessons for future engagements. And yet amidst these reflections, the undeniable reality remained. Courage, strategy, and coordination had collided with unrelenting force, and the island bore the cost of that collision in every crater, bunker, and scarred ridge. As night fell over Iwo Jima, the survivors of the battle looked out across the volcanic terrain, the glow of distant fires casting long shadows. The silence of the night was punctuated only by the crackle of dying fires, the occasional moan of the wounded, and the whisper of wind across blackened sand. The human and structural remnants of the battle stood as a testament to what had transpired. Fortifications reduced to tombs, courage tested to its limits, and strategy proven decisive in the unforgiving arithmetic of war. And in this quiet, the stories of the fallen found their place. Personal heroism, tactical decisions, and the relentless advance of the Marines were woven into the memory of the island. Folklore emerged alongside the facts, tales of ghostly figures guiding soldiers, inexplicable survival, whispered warnings carried on the wind. These legends, intertwined with meticulous records, offered a bridge between human perception and the reality of combat. They preserved the humanity amidst the devastation, giving meaning to acts of courage, sacrifice, and endurance. As historians would later reflect, the lessons of Iwo Jima extended beyond the tactical and strategic. They illuminated the limits of fortification, the necessity of adaptability, and the enduring value of human courage under extreme conditions. The island, scarred and silent, became a symbol of both human achievement and human cost. Each bunker ridge and crater spoke to the confluence of preparation, innovation, and bravery. Each survivor carried a story that would echo for generations. And as the final embers of conflict faded, the narrative of Iwo Jima settled into history. What if the defenders had anticipated every move? What if the Marines had faced unexpected obstacles? The questions lingered, provoking reflection on chance, courage, and the unpredictable calculus of war. Yet the truth was undeniable. Fortifications failed, bravery endured, and the lessons of strategy, coordination, and human will were etched indelibly into the volcanic sands. Next, we will journey to another theater where similar forces of human courage, tactical planning, and technological might collide. Each battle, each story revealing anew the cost of war and the enduring echoes of those who faced it. The history of Iwo Jima remains a stark reminder that in the crucible of combat, human determination meets the relentless force of strategy, technology, and chance, leaving lessons and legends in its wake.